I'd like to tell you something about my country. Our land is beautiful and rich. We have all the resources we need, yet most of my people are poor and suffer hardship and oppression. I'm Jose Diokno, a lawyer and a Filipino. I was arrested when martial law was declared and was kept for about almost 2 years under detention. If I could be detained this way without trial and without charges, what about all the other people? A lot of people who had absolutely no political ideology to speak of, but who were simply fighting for their rights as human beings. Little farmers, squatters, students, workers. They were all being detained simply because they were standing up for their rights. And something had to be done about this. It was at that time that I decided that if I should ever get out, then I would see what I could do to help.
Pepe Diokno would always be equal to the nobility of any cause he espoused. If Pepe believed in it, there was sure to be justice and reason.
He used his brilliance to serve his people.
Si Senator ay isang gift.
A mentor?
He was a symbol.
He has never been a traditional politician.
He devoted all of his time to the defense of the weak.
Courage and consistency. Those are two words I've always associated with Pepe Diokno.
You see, he's primarily a lawyer, and whenever there were abuses committed, he was the one to whom they always went in order to obtain redress. And he was a lawyer who would work nights and days continuously for the defense of the men that came to him and asked for his help. The members of the Presidential Committee would go to the house of Senator Diokno and talk things over with him, although he was already bedridden. He had been able to train his family to stand for those sacrifices, to make those sacrifices for the benefit of the people.
He was a real nationalist. He set an example. Not only did he speak out, but he made it a point to join rallies, to encourage other people. To me, that's very important. He was independent. Usually, when you are independent, sometimes you are misunderstood when you don't agree with all that is at that time popular.
I have proclaimed martial law. Even if martial law is the will of the commander-in-chief, his will is limited by the Constitution. His is not an unbridled will. His is not a will that says, it is so because I order it. It is not so.
You know, by being pro-Filipino, people misunderstand it as being anti-American. An American should be pro-American, a German should be pro-German. Why should we not be pro-Filipino? That's the mistake that most of the people think. The way he lived, the way he fought, is the best example of his contribution to the country.
Part of what he was because of his wife, who supported him greatly. She was the woman behind him, in a sense. That handsome, high-cheekbone woman named Nena. And she was a great support, a great support. Everywhere he went, she went. She was the cheerleader sitting in the benches. And when he was sick, she never left his side. I absolutely, day and night, whenever you went to the house, she was there beside him. So I don't want to forget her. She was a good friend also. They were both good friends that I never expected to have such a gift in my life.
Napakalaki ng puso ni Senator. May sakit siya, pero gusto niya siya mismo ang humawak ng kaso ko. Ikinaso nila sa akin ay yung kalaban ng gobyerno, Nung makuha nila ako ay pinasok yung baril sa aking bibig. Ang pinangtakip nila sa mata ko at sa bibig ko ay mga sticker ni Pangulong Cory. Habang pinapalo nila yung ulo ko, pinapatugtog nila yung speech ni Ninoy. Nung ako'y kanilang matagpuan, dinala ako nila sa bahay ni Senator Diokno. Ibinalita sa akin, Midel, si Senator Diokno mismo ang hawak ng kaso mo. Tanay pang hearing namin. Kotse niya ang ginagamit namin. Alas 6 ng umaga kami aalis. Kasama pa si Kanena. Punong-puno yung courtroom noon. Nung nagpakilala ng Kapepe, Jose W. Diokno, Your Honor, for the defense. Napaangat ang judge at tumindig at nagbigay pugay kay Senator Diokno. Sabi ko, tapos na ang boxing, panalo na ako. Napakatapang niya. No? Kaya niya itaya lahat. Kaya niyang ibigay ang sarili niya walang kondisyon. Napatunayan ko yun. Pinigay niya sarili niya sa akin. Hindi pa siya nakontento, sinama pa niya si Kanena. Grabe. Hindi mo kayang sukatin si Kapepe.
We got to know each other in prison because we would chat every afternoon in the garden through a sawali wall. I asked him, what makes a good lawyer? He said, it's not the most intelligent, the most learned, the most experienced lawyer that makes a good lawyer. It's the one who studies his case and is prepared to appear in court. So he said, for every 1 hour that he talks in court, he studied for at least 10 hours.
Therefore, as lawyers and as law students, our function is not only to cause respect for law, it is to improve law so that it will truly give us justice.
And it's people like Pepe that kept pounding values through their speeches, through their interviews, through their writings. It was always a set of values.
We had great disagreements, because I believed in the necessity of a revolution talaga. And he didn't. Although you must remember this, he was the lawyer of so many of the rebels themselves, And his usual argument was, alam mo, Frankie, sabi niya, once you accept violence, you cannot control it. And I don't want to be in a position where I will be controlled. It was I who was trying to convince him. He was to me a great Filipino.
Despite the atmosphere of fear in the martial law era, his moral courage stood out. Right after he was released from detention, I think it was just a matter of days or just a few weeks at most that he agreed to a speaking engagement in UP. It's as if he never got jailed because he didn't show the fear. It was also a UP economics classmate of mine who asked him point blank, "Are you an oligarch?" And without batting an eyelash, he said, "Yes." And there was a lot of applause because, number one, he had the moral courage not only of his political convictions, but he had the moral courage to be honest and frank about where he stands in society. But there was never any doubt about where his heart was. It was for the poor and the less privileged. I still have a smile in my face every time I remember that he would sit in a big chair and every one of us would gather around, and some of us would be literally sitting at his feet and looking up to him and just absorbing his wisdom. Cowardice is infectious, but courage is also infectious.
Kapepe Diokno was not just a critic, but he was a moral paragon. And one of the primary messages of Kapepe Diokno is justice, And justice is not simply, the justice you get in a court. It's basically a fairness in society. He was imprisoned with Ninoy. He had suffered for his principles, and even after he was released, he continued being principled. And I think that's hard to do. Any movement for justice, any movement where you want to change society needs heroes. I would put Ka Pepe Diokno in that pantheon of heroes.
Sana may pagsisikap na buhayin uli yung diwa ni Ka Pepe. Sana mang paraan.
We need to keep reminding ourselves that, in our DNA, flows the blood of these heroes, flows the blood of this kind of commitment and devotion and accomplishment.
To build on what they did and said. You can't start from scratch.
So if it's in our DNA, then we can tap something.
And we have such bright people and bright economists and bright politicians.
You can't go forward unless you know where you come from.
Hindi hadlang ang kahirapan para maging malakas ka. Hindi hadlang ang kahirapan para makapag-aral ka. Hindi hadlang ang kahirapan para tulungan ang iyong sarili.
Whatever you do, even if it's the smallest part of an assignment, excel at whatever that is.
To build a better country and a better society.
To create not so much a prosperous nation, but a just nation.
Sindihan ulit yung apoy.
For us to stop being a land of promise and to become really a land of promise fulfilled.
I know my people, and even if we have to wade through blood and fire, we will be free. We will develop. We will build our own societies. We will sing our own songs.